In this section, we're going to dive into unpacking standards. Unpacking standards is part of the first stage of the understanding by design process. The content standards are the driving force behind an effective curriculum. As we start the curriculum writing process, we're going to start with standards and build the curriculum around the content standards. As we start to unpack the standards, it is the nouns that will reflect the big ideas of the content or the big ideas the students need to know. It is the verbs that will indicate the tasks, actions, or skills that the students need to complete as part of that standard. The standards work as our guide as we develop and write our curriculum. As we examine the standards, we look to answer these three questions. So the first question, what is the work of the standard? What is it that we want the students to do? When we get into the second one, do our lessons and assessments match the intent of the standard? As we begin to write curriculum, we need to determine if those lessons, activities, and assessments are aligned with the intent of the standard. Sometimes we look at these activities and lessons that are fun, but do they really match the intent of the standard? At times, we may look at the standard and miss the intent. If the standard is about the Bill of Rights, we may build a lesson around the Bill of Rights, but the intent of the standard calls for the students to specifically understand the rights and the limits of government. Do these lessons on the Bill of Rights address these specific components, or are the students exposed to just the knowledge of the 10 articles of the Bill of Rights? So that's one of the things that we need to really look at, is what is really the intent of that standard, and to help us understand how we're going to build lessons to address the intent of the standard. The third question we want to look at is looking at what type of thinking does this standard require. So the type of standard that it requires, we want to really dive into the rigor or the depth of knowledge of the standard. Do the students need to identify, analyze, explain, create? The type of thinking tells us what we're supposed to do to design those lessons to get at the heart or the intent of the standard. If we are teaching the students about a cell and ask the students to label the parts of the cell, but the standard asks the students to describe the function of a cell as a whole and describe the way the cell parts contribute to the cell's function, that lesson would not address the intent of the standards. We may be getting at the basics of the standard, cells, but not at the depth of knowledge needed for this standard. As we unpack the standards to gain a deeper understanding, deeper knowledge of what the standard says explicitly, the standards and benchmarks will tell us more than what the students need to know. It will also indicate the skills and actions the students need to be able to demonstrate to show mastery of the standard. This is a language arts standard. This standard is broken down to show what the students need to know and the skills or action that the students need to demonstrate. As you can see, this standard has multiple pieces of knowledge that the students need to know, and they are all written down. Likewise, there are several skills and actions the students need to demonstrate within this standard. After you've broken down the standard, you can start to look at the learning targets to address the standard. With this standard, this will probably take many learning targets to address this standard, and in turn would probably take several days of instruction. So again, you can see, because it might take several days, because there's lots of pieces of knowledge that the students need to obtain through this standard, and then likewise there are many skills or actions that the students need to be able to do also. So that's why this might be several days lesson to get through just this one standard. So as we're unpacking the standard, you want to dive in and you want to circle the verbs or the skills and actions the students need to be able to do, and then underline the nouns. The nouns are the concepts or big ideas that the students need to be taught. So as we're going through and looking at these types of things, because like I know we talked about circle the verbs and underline the nouns, but we're going to do this electronically, so we don't necessarily have to have that piece. But again, it's all about what the verbs and nouns are, because they're really going to get at the intent of that standard. So I want to take a look at an example. So this is a social studies U.S. history standard. So it says, describe the recurring antebellum debates over slavery and states' rights, popular sovereignty, and political compromise. Analyze how the American political system broke down in the 1850s and culminated in Southern secession, the establishment of the Confederate States of America, and the Union response. So as you can see from this example, there are lots of things that are in this one. You have more than one verb, you have lots of nouns in here, telling you that in this one standard, there's a lot that's going on that the students need to know and be able to do. So if we were to break this down, you can see that the students will need to be able to describe and they'll need to be able to analyze. But it's more than just saying students describe. What do students need to describe? So the students are describing the antebellum debates over slavery and states' rights. They're describing popular sovereignty. They're describing political compromise. So you can see that there's a lot going on just in this one standard. So this is probably going to take several days of instruction, and to break this down, you are probably looking at several learning targets to address this standard. So again, kind of going back and looking at this again, this is what it would look like after we've completely unpacked the standard. When we circle the actions and underline the knowledge of the standards, we're going to write it out. So this is an example from a workshop. We are not going to write these out on a poster like this. Next, we're going to look at a couple of examples that were done within our school district from some different content areas, so that you can see what a finished product would look like as we work through this process in our school district. So this first one here is from social studies again. Apply the geographic models to explain the location, economic activities, and land use patterns in the United States and the world. So what is the knowledge that the students have to have? How to apply geographic models. So what are the skills and actions that the students need to be able to do? Apply geographic models to explain the location of economic activities, and apply geographic models for land use patterns in the United States and the world. So this right here tells you that there are three big concepts that the students need to be able to do, and all of it within that sense of geographic models. So if we go and we look at another example from a different content area, we have recognize that animals pass through the same life cycle stages as their parents. So what is the knowledge the students need? Students need to know the animal's life cycle. And then the skills or actions that they need to be able to do, recognize that animals have the same life cycle as their parents. So just wanted to give you some examples. So these are examples from teachers in our school district that worked on this previous year. And this is what their standards were, and this is how they broke it down, showing the knowledge and then the skills and actions that are required of that standard. So as we go through this process, you're going to do something very similar. We're going to do this on an Excel document. So we have this put together. So when you get to this point, after you've gone through this training, you're going to have in your folder for the curriculum that you're writing, you're going to have all the standards listed out, and then you're just going to break it down. So you're going to go through, and then you're going to list the knowledge, and then you're going to list the skills and actions. One of the things that you might want to do as you're going through this process that's going to help you as you get into the writing process is breaking this down. So in the sheet, you can actually break this down So you can see there's several different things that are here, and you can put these on different lines to kind of break them up so it's a little bit easier for you. So once we've been through this, we will actually have all the standards on a document for you, and then you'll just go in and you'll fill these out, and these will be in the team drive under the content that you are writing for this summer.